So, while we still wait for the chassis to turn up from Scott's Hot Rods, let's design a chassis. Um, so, took the time. Matt and I, my son Matt and I, we went through and measured all the points on the stock uh, 1955 Chevy 3/4 ton chassis. And the key takeaways here is we wanted to plot out all the important measurements, specifically where each body mounting point was in X, Y, and Z, as well as some of the contours of the frame, the center of the wheelbase in the front and the rear. And we also, we took a lot of measurements. But we were looking for things like, angle, straightness, depth, so X, Y, and Z on each location. And we plotted out the cab mounts, the where the motor actually was in relation to everything, and the like core support mounts, and even the bed mounts. Even though that's a story for a different time. But we took all the data we could off this chassis, and we got it to a point where we would recorded everything so I could start working on some a CAD design. Now I use SolidWorks. I use I've been using it for years. I particularly like SolidWorks, but there's many options. There's a lot of free options out there now. You can use AutoCAD 360. There's a free license for that. There's a free license for Google SketchUp. There's lots of ways to put this in CAD. But honestly, if as long as you take your dimensions right and kind of can visualize what you're trying to do, you don't even really need to put it in CAD. But a lot of people don't. I like to put it in CAD so I can visualize things, try a bunch of different options. Um, but let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do was the front frame horn, which I did here. Now you can see the frame horn has some bends in it, and I don't have a big fancy, 2x4 bend it to hard mandrel, bend it to hard weight bender or anything like that. But what I can do is I can use this technique here. What you do is you make the appropriate cuts in the tubing when it's laid out flat, and then it's quite easy to bend this radius into the top, collapse this gap here, and weld it up. And it's super strong, and it will never stretch on you. It will never go back from a memory. Um, this is this. You take I sketch it out, then I'll take and expand it to what I have to cut when it's in its straight form. And this drawing here is what I would have to cut, all the solid lines. The center lines, or the transparent lines, the dashed lines here, those are measurements that I take to transfer from this state to exploded state, or unbent state. So what I'll do is I'll take this design, and this happens to be a 2x4 15 degree. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll make a template of this out of like some thin wood or a piece of aluminum or something like that. And I'll make a nice template so I can use it on the drag tip on my plasma cutter. And I'll just set this on the 2x4 piece of stock. I'll cut these surfaces, I'll cut these edges, and then all I have to do is heat this radius and bend it, and it, maintaining the angle between this surface and this surface. And when it gets to the right point, I clamp it off and weld it. And that gets you some nice radius bends. It gives you a nice radius. You don't have sharp points on the top, but it gives you a nice point to how to work that out, how to basically bend something without having the an actual mandrel bender. And there's issues with mandrel benders, right? I mean, when you bend a piece of material like this, it keeps a memory, and under the certain stresses and loads, it could go back. Um, so this is kind of how I like to do it. And it's not terribly fancy. If you have a plasma cutter, or gosh, you could even do this with a grinder wheel if you were super patient, but I'm not. So I'll cut templates for the varying degrees that I need, and I will bring those up to the shop, and I'll literally just start, plasma cutting. You can locate your point really nicely, as to where this goes by just putting a center line on this drawing, or a center line on the template. Then you know exactly where you need to be bending, and it works. So, I've done this for other things. I did this on racing chassis. I've done it in other applications, but this is how I like to do it. I'm sure there's 100 different ways of doing this, and you could just pie cut it out, butt weld it up, fish plate it if you're concerned about the strength. All possibilities. I just like to do this because I think it's a cleaner look for me. So let's go back. But what I did was I've kind of gone through and measured, where the frame rail adjusts on the stock frame. I trail it off in the back. It doesn't trail off on the stock frame, but it gets significantly wider down here, and I'll show you how I accommodate that in a minute. And then I just put my bumper mounting holes in here, and this is simply a hole that I can run a piece of pipe through to tie both frame horns together. I like to run it when I'm tying things together like that. If I can, I like to put a hole directly through the material so I can weld it on both sides, and it's super strong. And I'll show you where I get to for that. The next step is the frame rail assembly. Now, the frame rail that I had was a long bed. So the measurements that I did, I took all my cab mounts, my core support mounts. I even threw in a sway bar mount here, but that's not really located yet. You can see I also put little holes down through the chassis to indicate where my this thing didn't move properly, but where my wheelbase is. So this is the center of the axle in the rear. This is the center axle in the front. These are my cab mounts at the appropriate heights. And I didn't put the holes in. I think I have them modeled, but I didn't put the holes in here for the bed, simply because in the rear frame rails, I lifted it up. I came up almost 5 inches from the bottom of this frame rail, where the stock frame rail is only up like an inch or two. I wanted the extra space because obviously I'm going to lower the ride height on this truck, and I wanted to get it to a point where I could, get plenty of travel. Now, I'm not going to bag this thing or anything like that. It's going to be strictly a coilover chassis, and we'll go through each step as to how we're going to design that. And I haven't shown any of the cross members or any of the internals here yet, which I will probably in the next step, because I'm going to do some more bracing in here. I'm going to tie it back to a nice cross member back here that my trailing arms are going to mount to. And we'll talk about some different options for that probably in another video. But for right now, you can see what I did is I took 2x6 material here, and I just cut it. Again, I'll make a nice template, and I cut it so that my rails will fit in there at an angle. Then I can, I'll chamfer this out and weld it up. And you can see what that does. That ties in this frame rail here with a lot of bead, right? So you can weld all the way through here, all the way across the top, around the bottom, on the inside, and that's all angular. So that will end up a really strong assembly. And instead of just trying to butt weld this or cut an angle on it or whatever, you can do all that. but I just think this is going to give a much tighter interface, a better overall product in the end. I did the same thing in the rear. Obviously, my rear frame rail is a little more abrupt. So there isn't as long an angle here, but again, it ties it all in nicely, gives you a nice clean look on the top, and it gives you the opportunity to do all of that. Let's go back to the short bed configuration because that's what I'm going to be building first. And again, the difference between long bed and short bed, I just made two different versions of this. And you can see the configuration there. I can switch back and forth. I have configurations for, long bed or short bed. Obviously, I kind of want to do both because I have the frame for a long bed, but a short bed is simply the same frame shortened up 9.2 inches, I believe. So, and I threw some cross members in the back here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do there yet. A lot of that's going to happen, be dependent on what I do for a gas tank, because the gas tank's going to go back here, and then the rear end and rear suspension setup. So that's kind of important too. And again, I've got 3 bends on this one, where I have 3 bends on this one as well, here, here, and here, and I'll do those same types of cuts. I'll just figure out what the angle is for each one of these, and I'll make a template for each angle. Hopefully there's some that are similar. And I will just use my drag tip on the plasma, cut those little cool parts out, and I can bend those super easy with just a torch and and a welder. No problem. So then I built my body mounts here. Again, those are pretty important. And I did throw on the core support up here because, again, that's a key location. All of the Z heights are in the right place. So that's basically it for my methodology. I'm going to start with this. I'll probably do a different segment on the rear end mounting, 4-link, panner bar. Do I use a drag link? What's the nicest way to go here? Now, I have a lot of experience dealing with this in stock cars and circle track cars, but I'm not sure any of those suspensions I'd want to ride around the road on long term. So, but we can talk about that. There's really a bunch of good options. It's not rocket science. That's probably what I'll do next is start working the rear end housing, getting that adjusted properly. And again, it's going to be a little while before I build this, but I have the time while I'm waiting for the parts to be the Firebird frame to be declared done. Excuse me. And so I figured I'd get some CAD time in, rather than putter around the garage and sweep the floors again. I figured this would be a great way to get started, get all this information, then I can move the stock frame and running gear for the 55 Chevy out of there, find a new home for that, because all I really needed was the data points. And that's what I've got here. So this should be a really nice little design for a 55 through 59 Chevy half ton, or however you want to put it. It's going to be a street rod in the end, so tons don't matter anymore. But I am configuring it so I could build it as a long bed or short bed. That's just a matter of convenience since I have it available. So yeah, any comments, questions? Like this, subscribe, do whatever. But I'm thinking, this is the starting point. I'm going to be watching the comments as I do this since I have time. And I'll probably start with a rear end design. We'll throw it out there, let everybody comment on it, see what they think. But, here's the frame design. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. I don't mind. I have thick skin. You think I'm an idiot? Just use the old frame, go nuts. But I'm really looking for something that when I throw a 400 horse engine on this thing, I'm not going to be worried about old metal and things twisting on me. So I'm looking to build something on par with a Retromod or a just an everyday cruiser. I'm not looking for a pickup. I'm not looking to haul things. I'm certainly not looking to tow things, although it might be cool to tow the boat around with it once in a while. But yeah, I'm probably looking at an LS, at 5.3 LS in this one. I have one out of an Avalanche, a Chevy Avalanche. So I think that would be a good solution for this. And I just want to make this totally drivable. I want to make a car that's, if my wife wants to take it out to the store or to work or something, she can. I'm not looking for something you have to be careful you don't burn the tires off it. So anyway, this is the first pass at the frame rail system. Again, I haven't added the cross members or any of the internal bracing yet. That will be coming. But I really want to concentrate first on the rear end design and the rear suspension, get that kind of placed, and then we'll work our way forward and then figure out what we want to do for an independent for suspension in the front. There's lots of options there. We'll talk about that as when we get through the rear end part of it. But again, comment, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. This will be a fun build. I've done this sort of thing many, many times before for racing chassis, but street chassis are a little different. And I just think it'll be fun to fabricate this and basically have my own chassis design that I can build anytime I want. So this is kind of where I'm headed with it. Let me know your thoughts.